Hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my overview of SKALD against the Black Priory. So for those not across it, I do overviews on this channel. I just have a look at the first 2 hours of a game. That's the Steam refund window. Steam reckons you can make up your mind in that time, whether you want to keep it or not, and I tend to agree. Generally speaking, 20 hours in, you're probably not going to change your mind about what you thought 2 hours in. So it's a short punchy video, I give you the broad strokes info, try and keep it around 10 minutes, and from that, you can make up your own mind. So off the bat, I really like this. I like it a lot, which is almost unusual. Being a nerd, part of me is quite drawn to CRPGs, and I've played a lot over the years, but it's one of those things, I realize I'm sort of slowly falling out of love with them, I suppose you could say. And there's a multitude of reasons, but I really think it's the more Western AAA NPC dialogue design, and I just find it's tired. And it dates back to things like the BioWare model, right? Where you interact with NPCs that are essentially a bloody slot machine or a vending machine, and you just press the buttons, you know? They'll give you 5 dialogue options, and the dude just stands there and announces his feelings, and it's this sort of one-sided monologuing character development, and it feels closer to something like that terrible bloody Glee Club YouTube show Critical Role, where they've lost the plot and it's less about actually playing a CRPG and more about, oh, it's my turn in the spotlight to try and launch my C-grade acting career. Let me hog the microphone for a moment. And I just feel that bleed in a lot of stuff. Baldur's Gate 3, I know it's not popular for me to say that, but I find it very hard to engage with all these NPCs where you're essentially just probing for information or trying to find a way to put your dick in them. It's all, funnily enough, quite shallow. I like this because your followers are exactly that. They're secondary, they're hanger-ons. You know, there's a little bit of dialogue slipping through, but it's closer to a little bit more of a, dare I say, linear narrative. You know, the reason that JRPG character development works quite well is probably because it's all inside of quick little cutscenes and they have to adhere to narrative flow without boring the player. So to put a bow on my little rant about characters and their prevalence in CRPGs, unnecessarily so, this game focuses more on world building, at least so far. And it's really interesting, and that's the draw for me with a lot of these sort of games. It's impetus driven, right? The quest and the mystery behind it and pulling the thread is what compels you to go forward, less so the characters in the world that want to just tell you about themselves. So you're basically being sent to this island on a quest to find this chick that's gone missing from a powerful noble dude, but you have background with them. There's like a little flashback, covers it off quite neatly. So you're sort of going out of moral obligation. Your ship crashes and you end up on the bloody shore, you know, washed up shipwreck, essentially soft restart of your character. So you tutorialize on the boat, and then you end up on the shore from level 1, right? I've met a couple of side characters and had them join into my party. The character creation's pretty good. I do find, and look, it might just be personal choice, the front loading of so much spreadsheet bullshit in CRPGs, I honestly think a lot of that is more holdover nostalgia, because that's the formula we used 20 years ago. When you don't know anything about the game, having 10,000 stats and being asked to pick 3 points into alchemy out of 100, I think that's just a bit obnoxious. So this game, at least it's a bit thinner. It's still got a complexity, but it's graspable. And essentially with your leveling up, it's less about leveling points up. Your class seems to dictate what, you know, if you get strength or presence is sort of like a mana thing. So you get those points dictated more by your class leveling up, and all you really need to do is slot in feats into trees. And those trees are fairly diverse depending on your class. So like I picked Hospitaller because I was just curious. It was the only medium armor class, and it's like a sort of healer, but there seems to be a bunch of different types of clerics and types of warriors. It's a little bit obtuse, but my dude's got like lay on hands, and I found another bloke with 2-handed swords that can do all sorts of weapon mastery, and I've got like an archer chick, and so it's got all the staples, and I would say plenty of variety, but without being overwhelming. So that's, funnily enough, probably my 2 biggest criticisms of CRPGs in general, and the things that they've learnt incorrectly to hold over through the genre as a staple, especially in the West. Overly verbose and focused in on side characters who are just dialogue spitting machines, and walls of text spreadsheets. So this game addresses both of those well. The world seems really interesting. It's doing a sort of gothic horror, but maybe more cosmic horror, more like Cthulhu-like, and it seems pretty distinctly located to whatever mysterious thing's going on in this island, and that I find really quite compelling. They haven't gone into it too much, but the sort of inference is that your character and party are fish out of water, in that the rest of this fantasy world, what little it's built out so far, doesn't have tentacled monsters smashing ships and giant crabmen taking people away. So it's horror inserted. I don't know what else you would call it. A horror incursion, perhaps, within this fantasy world. Already, a lot of this stuff's actually been really compelling. You know, I don't necessarily want to give too much away, but like I did a side quest where it was a bit grim, bit dark, but actually kind of, you know, Brothers Grimm-esque. This mum was crying next to a well, and you could hear children's laughter and cries coming from inside the well because her kids went down there, and I went down there, and there's some sort of bloody eldritch goo stuff trying to get you to touch the walls, and if you do, it essentially bricks your save because you succumb, and you have to go in there and try and find their bones and fight your way out. And it's all really quite cool and fairly imaginative and interesting. The combat is simple enough. There is some maneuvering to be had and flanking bonuses, that sort of thing, and then obviously you've got your skill shots and your spells. Something interesting I've run into trouble with is I'm kind of running out of arrows. You can rest to heal your party, and there's a whole crafting food mechanic that works fairly well, and you can like forage or fletch and make arrows, and so that's something I've been kind of leaning into, but the game won't let you abuse it either, so you have to eat at the campsite to heal, but if you try and camp without eating, your dudes are too hungry to craft, so I tried to get around that to get more arrows to make my archer work better. So it's good, like, you know, I feel some pressure from some of the mechanics. There is an emergent quality to my party being squeezed in that, you know, I've got an archer, I've got a really good bow, but I can't really make it work that well, not at the moment, not without investing a lot of unnecessary food resources just to fletch arrows. So it's cool considering that and how you move through the world, and maybe you don't pick as many fights. There's like an overworld map that you move around, and then you go into these kind of instanced biomes as well, so it's all fairly par for the course and what you would expect. And I don't know if I've even mentioned on the aesthetic, which is probably a big draw or a turn off depending, I suppose. The soundtrack matches it perfectly as well. I suppose readability might be a bit of a problem. I get a bit funny about pixel writing. We've had so many great examples of games that just don't have that and have clean writing. I get what you're trying to do, but just because I like this game doesn't mean I give it a real pass. When you have menus and text and writing, don't worry about its aesthetic cohesion as much as its readability. Don't get me wrong, it's nice to have all these menus that look in universe and try and keep the immersion going. I'm all for that. But as soon as your readability suffers because you're trying to inflict an art style upon it, that's almost like it's a fail. If it was Vic Roads doing your P-plates driving test, it's the same as hitting a curb. If you're gonna have walls of text in a game, they have to be readable. This is skirting the line. I haven't really had any problems, but everyone's different. Anyway, yeah, look, there's no need to waffle. This game's good. It's doing everything that it's supposed to do. Arguably, it's a bit more accessible than more other CRPGs, and I suppose the reason for my kind of rant about the current state of CRPGs is I feel like there's a lot of people praising them. There's a lot of thirsty, weird fucking people on Twitter, you know, that kind of make things like Baldur's Gate repulsive to me. Not really interested in having sex with bears and everything that moves. I just want to play a video game. And perhaps there are other people that sit in my, dare I say, prudish camp that are much more interested in a game that's focused on world building and interesting narrative hooks and less about thirsty Stardew Valley desperate housewife nonsense. So yeah, a lot of fun. I'll probably put some more time into it, to be honest. Alright team, much as there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.